really weren't attractive. But then you had this little incident with a company called Roche a few years ago that, as I recall, came in and made you an offer of about $40 a share, and you turned it down.
Right.
And when I think of all of the merger and acquisition that I've seen in San Diego, I don't think I can think of an example that's similar to what you were able to do. A lot of the time, of course, what happens is the offer comes in and you've got investors who've been in for a long time, they see it as an attractive offer. Venture folks, they want out and they take the deal. You held out and you had a board, and maybe you can talk a little bit about your board that backed you up. But that was a huge company coming after you and making you an offer. And I'd love to hear. I think we'd all love to hear a little bit more about what you went through and how you were successful. I mean, what are you trading at today?
Today, 218.
218. So that's a little better than $40.
A little better, yeah. Yeah. Well, that whole episode was precipitated by a collapse in our stock price that happened in the third quarter of 2011. We were trading, I think it was in the 60s or low 70s, and then if you remember back in that time, there was sequestration, so NIH funding was, everybody thought was going to zero, and Europe was falling apart. At the same time, we happened a quarter before that to introduce a new reagent kit to the market that tripled the output of our install base. So it was a phenomenal improvement in sequencing technology, but it had the knock-on effect of essentially increasing the capacity of the install base in a way where people slowed down their purchases of new machines. And we'll come back to that to talk about whether that was a good decision or a bad decision, because we've done lots of post-analysis on that decision. But our stock dropped from that 60s to low 70s down to about $24 a share, and that happened in the course of a couple months. And so that's what precipitated Roche coming after us. And I got a call from the CEO of Roche, and he said, "We'd like to have a meeting with you and your chairman." We did that at Bill Raster's house down at the beach. It lasted about 40 minutes, and about 3 minutes into it, he said, "Well, we're going to acquire your company." And I said, "Really?" I mean, literally. So about 10 minutes of small talk, 3 minutes into the meeting, we're going to acquire your company, and we'd rather do it in a friendly way than an unfriendly way. And so we spent the next 10 minutes sort of talking about what they had in mind and what their structure was. And this was sort of middle of December, and by January, so over Christmas, we worked very hard to agree that we didn't like the offer that they had given us privately. And the board I called them up and I said, "We're not going to take the offer." And by about January 24th, they went hostile publicly. And that's where we got the $40 offer publicly. And the interesting part of this story is that we didn't have any venture capitalists on the board, so we had long been public, and so they were fleshed out. And we had a great group of long-term investors who believed in our ability to continue to innovate, as well as what we call the unbounded market opportunity that we have. And it's not just us, it's sequencing in general. And because people saw that unbounded market opportunity, they were very much in our camp in terms of sort of defending the position that management had on this. So they bid against themselves publicly a couple of different times and got up to, I think that the last public offer was about $51 a share. And we turned it down again without giving them any number that we wanted. So we never said, "We'll take X." And so they had to keep bidding against themselves in the public market because they had gone hostile. And so by the time it got to the third point, they drew a line and said, "Look, we can't do this publicly anymore." We went to the annual meeting. The vote was about 90% in our favor, about 6% in their favor. So we won that handily. And for the next year, there were a bunch of backdoor conversations that very few people know about, where they came at us in a bunch of different ways, saying, "Well, could we buy 55%? Could we be your exclusive IPD partner? Could we do all these other things?" And we continue to say no. One really important factor for us was that we do a rigorous strategic planning effort in our company every year, and it finishes in January. So at the time they came hostile, we had a perfectly fresh 3-year strategic plan that allowed us to create a very strong case to our shareholders that we could grow much faster and that their value creation opportunity was much greater with us remaining independent than being sold to Roche.
So